Have you ever wondered why wizards feel like the oldest, deepest mystery in fantasy stories? Why one glimpse of a robed figure with a staff instantly sends a shiver of curiosity down your spine? There's something haunting about them, something ancient, something unexplainably familiar. It's almost like our minds remember wizards even before we meet them in books or movies. But how can a fictional figure feel older than time itself? Maybe the real question isn't what wizards are, but why we're drawn to them. Because every wizard, no matter the world, carries the same strange energy, a quiet power, a hidden truth, a sense that they know something we don't. And that's exactly what pulls us closer. Wizards don't shout for attention. They command it with silence. They don't charge into war. They bend reality without raising their voice. They're calm in storms, slow in chaos, wise in darkness. Maybe that's why we seek them in stories. They're everything we wish we could be, strong without violence, wise without age, powerful without ego. But how did this character become the heart of fantasy lore? Where did wizards begin? Why do they appear in every culture, every myth, every ancient tale? Did humanity create them, or did something deeper inspire them? The truth is older than books, older than written fantasy, older than kingdoms, temples, and legends. Wizards existed long before the word wizard even existed. They lived in the stories early humans told around firelight. They whispered through folklore carried across continents. They hid behind shamans, druids, mystics, priests, healers, and astrologers. Every civilization had its version of the one who knows the unseen. And that role slowly evolved into the wizard archetype we recognize today. But the transformation wasn't simple. It was shaped by fear, belief, and imagination. Wizards were the bridge between what people understood and what terrified them. They represented possibility before scientific explanations existed. They were the voice of mystery in a world full of unanswered questions. And humans have always been attracted to mystery. That attraction kept wizards alive for thousands of years, and every generation added something new to their identity. A symbol, a trait, a myth, a power. Until eventually, the modern fantasy wizard was born. A figure shaped by culture, history, and imagination. A character that feels timeless because its roots stretch beyond time. But knowing this only deepens the mystery. Why do wizards still matter today? Why do we still crave stories about them? Why does their presence instantly elevate a world's sense of wonder? Maybe the truth lies deeper than nostalgia. Maybe wizards aren't just characters. They're symbols of something inside us. Symbols of curiosity, symbols of wisdom, symbols of impossible potential. And to uncover their full history, we must go further back than we've ever gone before. To understand the wizard we know today, we need to journey into the oldest stories humanity ever told. Because the first wizards didn't wear robes or carry staffs, they carried influence. They were the keepers of knowledge in a world full of fear. Every tribe had one person who understood herbs, stars, dreams, and sickness. That person became the earliest form of a wizard. They were respected, feared, and sometimes worshipped. Their abilities seemed supernatural because no one else understood them. They predicted storms by watching clouds. They treated wounds using plants. They interpreted dreams as messages from spirits. They guided communities through uncertainty. And humans hungry for explanations, turned them into legends. As civilizations grew, these figures evolved into priests, sages, and mystics. Egypt had its temple magicians. Mesopotamia had astrologer diviners. Greece had oracles and philosophers. China had immortal sorcerers in its folklore. Norse culture had seers and rune casters. Every culture shaped the wizard archetype differently, but the theme remained consistent. The wizard was the one who knew what others didn't, and knowledge has always been humanity's greatest form of power. As time passed, storytellers expanded these roles. They added rituals, they added symbols, they added moral lessons hidden inside magical tales. Eventually, wizards became a literary anchor in medieval legends. They appeared alongside kings, knights, monsters, and quests. They were guides, strategists, protectors, and catalysts for change. They shaped destinies with a single prophecy. They shifted battles with a single spell. They carried the weight of knowledge that others feared to understand. And through these tales, they gained shape. Tall, wise, cloaked in mystery, surrounded by secrets. As centuries moved forward, one thing became clear. Wizards evolved with us. They adapted to our fears, hopes, and dreams. The Enlightenment era made them symbols of forbidden knowledge. Romanticism made them symbols of wonder and imagination. Modern fantasy transformed them into mentors and heroes. At every step of history, wizards mirrored society's relationship with knowledge. They showed us what we feared about understanding the unknown and what we desired from mastering it. That's why wizards never faded from fiction. They evolved with our worldview, and every time we rewrote them, they grew deeper, richer, more symbolic. Until one day, the iconic image we all recognize today crystallized. The robe, the beard, the staff, the ancient wisdom, the calm voice that knows more than it speaks. But this image hides a twist that changes everything we think we know about wizards. And now, it's time to reveal it. Here's the twist you probably didn't see coming. The modern image of a wizard, the one we imagine instantly, is barely 150 years old. That robed, bearded, staff-wielding archetype. It's not ancient folklore. It's not medieval history. It's not even rooted in the earliest myths. It's a creation shaped mostly by fantasy writers of the last 2 centuries. And yes, that means the wizard you picture in your mind is younger than electricity. But this doesn't make it less powerful. It actually makes it more fascinating. Because the wizard archetype didn't endure thousands of years unchanged. It reinvented itself over and over again until it reached its most iconic form. And that form was sculpted by imagination, not tradition. The twist is that wizards aren't ancient symbols of magic. They're ancient symbols of knowledge that became magic. Magic was simply a metaphor for understanding what others could not. Those early healers, prophets, and scholars weren't casting spells. They were decoding the world. They weren't bending reality. They were explaining it before science existed. They weren't supernatural. They were ahead of their time. And that tiny shift in perspective changes everything. It means the heart of the wizard archetype was never about power. It was always about wisdom, about courage to explore the unknown, about curiosity strong enough to break boundaries. But something incredible happened in the 19th and 20th centuries. As fantasy literature blossomed, writers took the ancient wise one and transformed them into something fantastical. They gave them robes to symbolize their scholarly roots. They gave them staffs to represent authority without violence. They gave them beards to signify age, experience, and timelessness. They gave them towers to show isolation, focus, and devotion to learning. Every detail we associate with wizards today was carefully built by storytelling, and storytelling reshaped the archetype into something magical. But here's the real twist. Wizards didn't gain power because writers added spells. They gained power because readers added imagination. Our hunger for mystery turned scholars into sorcerers. Our longing for wonder turned knowledge into magic. Our desire for mentors turned old men into immortal guides. Wizards became symbols of what we aspire to be, not physically, but mentally. They represent mastery of the unknown. They represent the wisdom we hope to gain someday. They represent the kind of inner strength we rarely see in ourselves. And this deeper truth explains why wizards appear in every fantasy universe, no matter the creator. Whether it's ancient myths or modern stories, they always fill the same role: the mentor, the guide, the guardian of knowledge. They stand at the edge of mystery and invite us to walk into the darkness with curiosity instead of fear. They show us that understanding is a kind of magic. They show us that knowledge can reshape worlds. They show us that wisdom is power without cruelty. And that message has remained unchanged across thousands of years. That's why wizards feel so familiar even in brand new stories. Because we aren't meeting a new character. We're meeting an ancient idea. An idea that keeps evolving but never disappears. An idea that reflects our eternal fascination with the unseen. An idea that tells us there's always more to learn. And the more we learn, the more magical the world becomes. That's the true power of the wizard archetype. But understanding this deeper meaning prepares us for something even more profound. Because in the next part, we uncover why wizards aren't just characters in stories. They're mirrors of us. So here we stand, at the edge of a world woven from spells, secrets, and centuries of imagination. And now, the real question becomes simple. What do we do with this legacy? Because wizard history isn't just entertainment. It's a roadmap for human potential. These stories whisper a quiet challenge to all of us. They urge us to look at our own lives and ask where our power truly lies. Not in magic wands, not in enchanted scriptures, but in the choices we make every single day. Wizards in fantasy always begin as ordinary people, and that's the part we often forget. They were scholars, wanderers, misfits, or outcasts before they ever learned a spell. They had doubts, fears, and flaws long before they had abilities, and yet they stepped forward anyway. They studied when others slept. They searched when others surrendered. They believed when others mocked them. That's why their journeys feel so relatable. Deep down, every wizard's origin story echoes our own, because all of us start from uncertainty. All of us begin without knowing our path, and all of us have a moment where we must choose whether to stay normal or grow extraordinary. So let this history remind you of something powerful. Greatness doesn't arrive with lightning. It arrives with consistent spark, small choices, small actions, small moments of bravery that eventually grow into something unforgettable. That's what wizard lore has taught for generations. Magic isn't handed out, it's earned, and not through spells, but through effort. The discipline of a mage mirrors the discipline of a real person trying to change their life. The patience of a sorcerer mirrors the patience required to master any craft. The courage of a wizard mirrors the courage needed to face our own battles. This is why these stories endure. They remind us that the extraordinary is always within reach. So ask yourself, what part of your life is waiting for a spell of courage? What dream have you pushed aside because it felt too difficult to pursue? What impossible thing have you secretly wished you could do? Because wizards, real or fictional, never ran from the impossible. They ran toward it. They knew that obstacles are simply invitations for growth. They understood that transformation requires discomfort, and they accepted that meaningful journeys will always test them. But they walked forward anyway, and maybe that's the lesson you needed today. That your story still has chapters waiting to be written, that your power hasn't fully awakened yet, that you have more strength than you've ever allowed yourself to see. So let this be your moment, your awakening. Let this be the day you choose courage over comfort, the day you step toward your own version of magic. Because history shows us that wizards didn't just cast spells, they created themselves. And now, it's your turn to do the same. And now, as we close this journey, there's one truth left to reveal. Wizards didn't survive history because of their spells. They survived because they represented something far more powerful. They stood for the potential inside every human being. They symbolize the moment an ordinary person realizes they are capable of extraordinary things. That's why wizard lore still lives today. It's why readers still chase stories of ancient sorcerers and forgotten magic. It's why filmmakers still resurrect their worlds with fire, light, and runes. Because wizards remind us of the one thing we're all secretly searching for, meaning. We don't want to just exist. We want to transform. And that's exactly what wizard stories teach over and over. Every wizard begins powerless, but they choose to learn. They choose to rise. They choose to change their destiny. And that choice is the real spell. It's the magic that every one of us carries inside. When we read their stories, we're not escaping our world. We're learning how to master it, learning how to handle our darkness, learning how to use our light, learning how to grow even when the world feels too heavy. That's why wizard history feels strangely familiar, because at some point, all of us have felt like apprentices, lost, confused, searching for guidance, hoping something inside us is stronger than everything around us. And wizard lore whispers, yes, it is. It tells us that strength doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers. It sometimes hides. It sometimes waits for us to call it out. And when we finally do, everything changes. This is why their stories never fade, because they remind us to keep searching for what we are capable of becoming. They push us to believe in our potential, even when life feels impossible. They challenge us to rewrite the story we've been telling ourselves. They dare us to imagine a better version of who we can be. That's the lesson behind every spell, every prophecy, every hidden library. It's never about magic. It's about transformation. And that transformation begins the moment you decide to step forward. So maybe you're standing at your own crossroads right now. Maybe you feel stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed. Maybe you're waiting for a sign to begin. Think of this as your sign. Think of this as the moment the story shifts. Because you're not just watching history, you're becoming part of it. You're stepping into the role you were always meant to play. You're choosing courage over fear, growth over comfort, possibility over doubt. And that's what every legendary wizard has done before you. They didn't wait to be chosen. They chose themselves. And that single decision changed everything. Now it's your turn to choose, your turn to rise, your turn to create your own magic in the world. Because the most powerful spell ever cast will always be the one you cast on your own life.